to all our guests and our first submitters. Paddy, would you please open our meeting for us?
Yes, Chair.
Pretty dangerous.
We have some silence while we open our meeting, please. Thank you.
Well, you're over here, Will. See, there's a sign over there.
Can I sit here?
All right, Artie.
You're happy.
You're opening the meeting, Uppy. Now we're square. 3-3.
I'll just wait, Chair, until...
Just wait.
Yeah.
We'll get some civil...
The heavyweight division over here, the lightweight division over there.
Neil, could you settle down?
Just pass the ball to
Getting off to a really bad start here.
Okay. Too many lollies.
Too many lollies at the big party. Come on,
Here we
settle
go.
down. Thank you.
Unless you've got your app out, can I have you to focus up here? Or just from within? Many of us already know this karakia. You set the volume, I'll set the pace. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paddy, and thank you for being so patient.
You're having a shocker, Chair. It's out of control, hasn't even started.
Do we have any apologies? We have one from Henny Y and Charlie.
Councillor Ormsby? Oh,
Yes.
It's been in 3 times now.
3 times.
Anyone else? Do we have any apologies from anyone else?
Neil?
I'll be away at 10:30.
You'll be away at 10:30, and who was someone else who was away at 2?
No, mate.
Oh, Craig.
Probably at 2:30.
We just register all those things.
Does that put us below quorum?
For a hearing?
1, 2, 3.
Considered a meeting?
No quorum required.
We're here to hear our communities, aren't we?
Yes,
We're here to hear our communities. I would have thought we needed a
thank you.
quorum, but
Is someone to move those apologies?
I'll move.
Thank you, Will. Will you? Sheriff will second. All those in favour?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Team's on your left top in here, Chair. The
Are
other
there
one,
any
please.
notices? What do they do in Parliament when someone's playing up? They ask them to leave the order.
They do a press
You can
release.
stand out in the foyer for 5 minutes, Mr.
Way all
Barker.
right.
can I just be assured that with those apologies, we will still have a quorum for this?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Any notices? We have no notices. Any conflicts of interest? There must be some regarding all these submissions, but are there any?
We're here to listen,
We're here to listen.
therefore no comment.
Okay, there are no conflicts
Well,
of interest.
I should disclose that I have
All disclosures, yes.
I have provided legal advice to Hawke's Bay Airport, but that's on the planning scenario surrounding the second generation plan review for Napier City. Just putting that on the table. I don't think it's a conflict, but
Good advice. Oh well.
you'll have to ask
We'll
them.
ask them. Okay, thank
Do
you.
they
No, I
accept
don't
it?
think that is a conflict.
Now, that would be a matter of privilege, Mr. Barker, as you know.
Right, we'll move to item 3, which is the paper to receive the postal submissions. Do we need to go through the paper, James, or do we?
I'll just go straight into the
Because
yeah,
No,
I
we
think you
have
need
to-
to move and receive.
we do have to remove
the cover page.
So we have to remove, to consider the written submissions received. Do we have a move for that?
I'll move
Councillor
that.
Barker, Councillor Van Bake. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Pass, thank you. And we have another 2-0 paper to hear, resolve to hear the verbal submissions.
I will so resolve.
You also move,
I
actually.
will so move.
Thank you, and Sheriff will second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We can
Sweet,
move
is it?
straight into our submissions. And I note that we have the airport team here. So Stuart, welcome to our submissions, and you can sit up at the front here. Bring your team. So, thank you, Stuart, for coming. So the rules of these submissions are that everyone has 10 minutes, and you can use the whole 10 minutes, or you can leave time for councillors to answer questions. But before you do that, before we start the clock winding, it'd be quite good for you to introduce yourself and your team.
Morning. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, councillors. So, with me this morning, I've got Gareth Menser, who's our operations manager, and Stephanie Murphy, who's our airport planner. So, thanks for allowing us to come along and talk to our submission on the Hawkesbury Regional Council long-term plan. Our submission today relates to the Ahuriri Regional Park. I just wanted to start off by saying that the airport over the last number of years has put a lot of focus on our sustainability framework, and clearly we have a strong focus on interest and care for the Ahuriri estuary, the social well-being, the community aspects, and I think in principle we support the Ahuriri Regional Park. But we wanted to point out that the airport is a key strategic asset for the region, and we do have some concerns around safety, public safety. So we'd like to focus on those today. They are outlined in part 2B of our submission. We do a lot of focus and operational management on wildlife on a day-to-day basis, and it's something that we work closely with the Department of Conservation, Napier City Council, Landcorp and Fish and Game on. So on that note, what I was going to do was hand over to Gareth, and he's going to talk specifically to some of the challenges that we face around wildlife management on the airport. Thanks, Gareth.
Fantastic. Thanks, Stuart. So what I'm going to quickly do is it's a sprint through wildlife management at Hawke's Bay Airport, give you an idea of what we do, the environment that surrounds us, and the potential impact of the areas around the airport. So what we've got in the slide behind you, we'll talk about the natural environment. So it's not just, wildlife isn't something that we just manage on airport. It's, I mean, as you know, wildlife, when we talk about wildlife, that's birds, and birds tend to fly. And so they will move all around the airport and not necessarily on our land. So the slide that we've got here just shows some of the areas that of concern around the airport. So there's a swamp adjacent to the runway. So if you can see there, the main runway is the 1634, and the swamp is directly next to that. Now that's the only area or wetland swamp area that is under our control. The rest of this is land that we don't actually have any control over. So as we go through these, we've got wetland on the eastern side of the runway, and that is dock protected. We've got the southern marsh, which is also dock protected. There is Beacon Swamp to the north, so that's directly under the northern approach, which is dock protected as well. We've got the northern marsh, which has dock protection. And then the West Shore Wildlife Reserve, which has dock protection as well, and that's managed from a pest management point of view by the Napier City Council. And then we've got the estuary that surrounds the airport. It's not unique to have water around airports. So you've got other airports in the country, Auckland, Wellington, Nelson, New Plymouth and Invercargill, that also have a significant amount of water that surrounds them. When we talk about wildlife, there are a number of species that we deal with. The higher risk species at the moment, and that is due to either the likelihood of a strike, the size of the bird, or how they flock or where they tend to fly. So those are black-backed gulls, black swans and Canada geese. We have had strikes at Hawke's Bay Airport with black-backed gulls. Canada geese, prior to my time, there was one or two, so that's historic. To give you an idea of what Canada geese can do to an aircraft, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Miracle on the Hudson, so the movie Sully. That was an aircraft that was taken down by a flock of Canada geese. So Canada geese do present a significant and real risk to aircraft. We have had with the black-backed gulls, and wildlife is a really interesting subject and something that prior to my time at Hawke's Bay Airport I really had no idea of how important it would be. An example of the black-backed gulls is we had a strike a couple of years ago, and that was because we ended up with frogs on the runway. So we had a rain event, frogs came out on the runway, we didn't have time to get them off, so the gulls came in and had a feed, and then we couldn't get rid of those frogs, and an aircraft came in and collected 5 black-backed gulls. So that's a massive 9 kilos of birds that were hit in one strike. What we'll talk about now is taking a similar sort of area, but showing you where we have some of those high-risk species. So Canada geese surround the airport. So we have them on the wildlife reserve, we have them on a lot of DOC protected ground, we have them on the Landcorp farm, we have them in the northern marsh, the southern marsh. So Canada geese, however, they're not actually on airport. So from an airport land point of view, we don't get them on airport, we get them surrounding the airport. We had Tony Billing undertake a study for us probably 2 years ago, looking at where the Canada geese come from. And there's a bit of a triangle, so it's Whakakī, Parongahau, and then through to Lochinvar. So they tend to be in those locations, and then we're smack bang in the middle of there, and they come through, whether it be when they're transiting between sites, and they'll stop, and they may feed on the Landcorp farm, and then overnight on the West Shore Wildlife Reserve. What tends to be the issue, and along the estuary, what we find is they'll feed on the Landcorp farm, then they'll fly at a really difficult height for us on the approach from the south, and then they'll fly to the West Shore Wildlife Reserve. So they transit right under the flight path that comes from the south. Get feral geese to the north. They're not as much of an issue as the Canada geese. They tend to not be as smart and are easier to control. I mentioned, and I'll probably labour the point a bit, that these are areas that we can't control as much because they're not our land. So we do struggle around control. So we do have to work with DOC, Regional Council, Napier City Council and Landcorp on how we control these. Blackback gulls, there was a colony in Beacon Swamp back in the 80s. Those of you who know Hans Rook, he was involved in the removal of that colony. We have had blackback gulls back in there and have had to undertake some control in that location. They are in the southern marsh, and we also do find them on the West Shore Wildlife Reserve as well. And then black swans. So black swans, there was a small population on the West Shore Wildlife Reserve prior to Christmas, and then we don't know why, but 200 to 300 turned up. Talked to Fish and Game, and we don't know where they came from, but those black swans, their numbers have started to reduce, but we, and such as I guess the nature of wildlife, we don't necessarily know where these birds come from. What we'll quickly talk about is where we sit from a national point of view, and it's something that isn't always pleasant to talk about, but in terms of wildlife and bird strike, CAA take bird strike numbers and convert them to strikes per 10,000 aircraft movements, and when they do that, we have the worst bird strike record in the country currently. It is a downward trend, and I'll talk about that shortly, the work that we have been doing, but we are still considered high, so we have a high risk. The trend is downward, but if you look in the right hand column there, we're still in double digits per 10,000, and no other airport is in the country currently. We talked about the higher risk species, so we on airport manage up to 30 species of birds. We do counts every Monday, and we come across up to 30. There are, however, 96 species that have been identified on the West Shore Wildlife Reserve since 1980. The stats that we're showing you now is how we have tracked. So whilst we're sort of, in the last slide I painted a picture which wasn't particularly good, our record has improved significantly over the past couple of years. So back in 2018 we had Aviashore, which are an international aviation wildlife consultancy. They undertook a wildlife management plan for us, and since that time we've undertaken a variety of different controls to start to manage the wildlife issues that we've had on airport. The controls range from, I suppose if I actually take a backward step, what we hadn't done previously is we treated it on airport. So we looked at the airport and then treated what was in our environment. What we've done since we've had this wildlife management plan is we've actually taken the time to look further afield. That's why we talk about areas outside of our control, areas that surround the airport, because they present a risk to us, so it's really important that we understand what's happening on those different areas. So since, and the circle shows you a peak at the tail end of 2019, I think it was, we have reduced our bird strike rate by 40% in that time. So we were at, where were we? A high of 22 down to 13.5 bird strikes per 10,000. Now, if we actually say how many strikes we've had in actual strike numbers, rather than converting to the 10,000, January we had 5 strikes, 1 in February and 2 in March. Those typically at the moment are smaller species, so all of those were Yellowhammers, starlings, sparrows were the birds that we had hit. The birds I mentioned, the higher risk, are those that we see around us that present a much higher risk to the airport and aviation. The images here are actually of a bird strike that happened above Beacon Swamp on the 23rd of August 2019. So these were, again, 5 gulls that were...
Is that it?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Gareth, but we've used our 10 minutes.
Sure.
But, the subject is so important that I do think, and I had a little chat to Stuart about it previously, but I think the subject's so important that councillors will want to hear this in more detail.
Sure.
So thank you for raising it so significantly in the submissions, but we need to get you back to probably our environmental committee and give you some serious time and give councillors serious time to reflect on it and to answer the questions.
Yep.
But it's not the appropriate place to do it now.
But also, Chair, I think rather than just describe the problem, we want to have some focus on solutions.
Yeah, so we need an hour. This is a session that we really need to take very seriously. So thank you very much. But we've got a very tight timetable, and as I say, it's really good that you brought this to the submissions, and we need to sit down before we go any further on some of the things, some of our plans, and hear you out and hear the issues, because I don't think there was the understanding around these issues that you put out today. So
Yeah, and more than happy to do a presentation. We can do it on airport as well if you want to have a tour
Yeah.
at some point. So whatever kind of works from a councillor's point of view, well, or a mix of the two.
yeah,
Happy
we'll
to do
come back to
anything.
you on that
Yep.
and get this issue fairly and squarely on the table. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to have you back.
Thank you.
Kevin, I have a photo of the 23 August 2019 on my phone. I was on the plane. I should have possibly disclosed that as well. Again. It's right there.
Joanella, welcome.
So was it on landing or what?
Oh, Annette is here too. Oh, so I didn't see you, Annette. No.
Did you notice anything when it happened?
No, it's someone else. There wasn't even an hour. Welcome, Joanna and Annette. This is familiar country to you, both of you. So, you know the rule, we have a tight schedule, so every submitter has 10 minutes, and you can use the entire 10 minutes yourself, or you can leave some time for councillors. It's up to you. It's up to you how you do it. You probably don't need to introduce yourself because everybody knows who you are, so we'll go straight into your submission. Thank you very much. You're doing the timetable.
Yes. Morena, everyone. Thank you very much for having us. We don't intend to take up too much of your time, but thought it was important to make a submission, a joint submission on behalf of Joanella and myself in support of the commitment you've made to the regional park project in your LTP. As you'd be aware, it's a joint project with Napier City Council, and we wanted, I suppose, to come and give you our support for both the level of funding that you've committed to this project, the partnership that you've committed to make with us both in the delivery of this project, and also in the funding timeframe that you have proposed in your LTP. Is there anything you'd like to?
No, just that we're in total support of the collaboration with the Ahuriri Regional Park. So Manauri Trust are really looking forward to that development, and fingers crossed it gets across the line with the LTP. Kia ora.
The other thing that we've been conscious of at Napier City that's come through in submissions, and you may be hearing it as well, is around the level of interested, affected and potential partners to this project. And we're really conscious that we're at the very first step of this in terms of figuring out if both councils are prepared to invest in the project. We're both hopeful at a Napier and a regional council perspective that you do, and we would like to then move forward into the development of a master master plan, a co-designed and co-developed master plan with you both and with Mana Huriri and with all of our other stakeholders. So we obviously have lots of partnering landowners, Department of Conservation, there's the airport who you've just heard from who have a significant interest in this project if it was to go ahead as well. And just putting on the table that we see a number of really key partners involved in this project as well, if we're successful with both councils' LTP's commitment. Thank you, Rex.
Questions? Craig?
Thanks very much. Just to clarify, are you here as an individual or is Napier City Council sitting here?
I am here as an individual, but in my capacity as the elected role I have. And the reason for that is Napier's also obviously opening this up as a LTP consultation item. And we thought it would be remiss for us to put a Napier City Council brand on a submission when we're also considering submissions ourselves.
Sure, no problem at all. And so, thanks very much. Interestingly, you just talked about the partnerships just earlier because you may have just heard the previous submission, or there's issues, and there's a common theme of the ratepayer / taxpayer actually is the owner of all the concerned parties around, or at least have current title, and potentially Mana Huriri with the settlement at the airport. So there's a lot of room there, and you're very open to that with your various hats on, both of you. There's it's early days, I know, but as the further we go, as we start, we've already got some issues in front of us, which I presume you're more than open to discuss with your entities you're with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just in terms of context, it's a really good point. And Napier City Council a number of years ago put together the Ahuriri Estuary Master Plan and Coastal Edge Master Plan, and that was done in conjunction with DOC, I think, and yourselves and a range of stakeholders at the time. And the regional park is a project identified through there. So I suppose in terms of a high-level concept, it's had some socialisation with the wider community before we've put this in our LTPs as well. And those partners would be aware of the project from that space.
Thank you. Thanks.
Neil?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chair, and firstly congratulations to Napier City Council for its involvement and Mana Huriri through Alice, so well done getting this far at least. I just wanted to pick up on another submission from the Tai Whenua in regard to, if you like, the involvement of Mana Whenua in the project. Can you give us a response to the level and extent of engagement with Mana Whenua on the entire project?
Yeah, I haven't personally read the submission, so I'm not aware of the comments made. Joanella may be best placed to make comment. I think from my perspective as kind of chairing that working group to start off with, we're really conscious that Te Committee o Whanga has a large role to play here, and Joanella is obviously the chair of that, and so that has Mana Whenua status, I suppose, over the Whanganui a Roto. We definitely see all of the four settlement entities in Hawke's Bay as having a significant part to play in that partnership role going forward, and we've also had involvement, I suppose, at the working group from the chair of our Māori committee in an advisory role as well. So we probably haven't direct engaged yet, and I've had this conversation with the Tai Whenua as well around resourcing and being really conscious around pulling commitment into projects that aren't necessarily funded or committed to going forward yet as well. So I think there's a balance there, and if we're successful, like I say, we see probably more conversations to come.
Yep, I think just on Mana Whenua, Neil, you must also remember that marae also are Mana Whenua, so, and that's yet to happen with any engagement like that, and that's what Annette is saying. If the project gets off the ground, then we have to bring all those people around the table. So although Mana Huriri is there, we're not potentially just the only ones that are identified as Mana Whenua. So I think we have to ensure that all Mana Whenua are included in it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Yes, that was going to be my question as well, because we've got a submission from the Tai Whenua Whanganui a Roto. So, it's but the message is this is early days, expect engagement. Are we in a sort of bit of a chicken and egg iterative process here where we're putting provision in our long-term plans without having defined a concept, and then people are saying to us, well, why are you putting that in there when you haven't done the concept and you haven't consulted us on the concept that you haven't got? We need to start somewhere, don't we? And do you think we've got this the right way around, putting the funding in before we've got the concept and we've consulted on it? Is it?
Yeah, I think you describe it accurately as a chicken and egg situation. I suppose from a process perspective, I feel reasonably comfortable with where we've come through. We've identified a high-level strategic vision that had engagement widely, including with mana whenua. We've then said, let's get a working group together and commit some funding as essentially placeholder funding, because until we have developed the master plan and the staging of that master plan, we don't know which capital projects and at what value of funding may need. So really the question to the community is, do we go ahead and invest in this space or do we not? And if it is a yes, then we roll in all of this sort of wider engagement, co-design master plan, staging of capital projects. But the first question is, do we proceed and do we commit operational spend to develop a master plan?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, team.
Kia ora.
Fenella.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
And Annette, thank you very much.
Lovely to see you, Chair.
Thank you, councillors. Angie Denby, are you here?
Yeah, well, this is what
Welcome, Angie. So you know the rules. You have 10 minutes, and if you want to leave some for councillors, you've got to speak within less than that 10 minutes. But before we click the clock, it'd be good if you introduce yourselves, councillors.
Yeah, that's part of my presentation.
Sorry, stand up.
I'm Angie
Don't need
Denby, the chairperson of the Ahuriri Estuary Protection Society, and this is Sarah Attlee, one of our committee. And I'd like to acknowledge the late Isabel Morgan, who spearheaded the society since its beginning 40 years ago until a couple of years ago, and our secretary Sue McDonald, who's not well at the moment, but she was there from the beginning as well 40 years ago.
Thank you.
Right. And just sitting over there and with the fan, it's very difficult to hear people's voices. I just like to flag that.
Do we need to acknowledge that we've just sent the pamphlet around so you know what the organisation is and you can keep it? It's not.
Right. Kia ora koutou, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission. I'm Angie Denby, the chairperson of the Ahuriri Estuary Protection Society, and this is Sarah. The society began 40 years ago to save the estuary from being turned into a marina, and they were successful. As you saw from our submission, our interest is focused on number 6, the Ahuriri Regional Park. I'd like to address 3 issues: pollution, recreation, and consultation. But first, what is our dream for the Ahuriri estuary? Te whanganui a orotu. Imagine this: clean, clear, flowing water, thriving habitats of birds, fish, invertebrates and plant life, lush patches of indigenous forest, the rich sound of booming bittern in their mating season, the spring arrival of godwits from their 8-day non-stop flight from Alaska, resting and recuperating in the clean, clear, peaceful environment of the upper estuary before they move down to the scrapes or embankment bridge mudflats. But what is the reality? Ahuriri estuary is seriously degraded. So firstly, pollution. Nutrient-rich sediment runoff from the hills, suffocating the health of the water. Rampant invasive tube worm, creating solid coral-like structures that impede water flow and are now creeping into urban waterways. Untreated stormwater from 70% of Napier that at times of heavy rain also carries overflowing wastewater and pollutants from the industrial areas of Pandora and Onikawa not being treated at source and frequently spilling into the waterways leading to Ahuriri Estuary. An estuary under siege from many directions. To us, pollution is where the priority lies, before we reach tipping point and the estuary becomes lifeless. Secondly, recreation. We need clarity about your proposals. By definition, a regional park appears to be about people and recreation. We believe the upper estuary as a whole should be managed 100% for wildlife values. There should be no additional access for the public. This area should not be paved or manicured for cyclists, dog walkers or tourist groups. This was discussed with Napier City Council at the introduction of the draft Ahuriri and Coastal Edge Master Plan and removed from their plans. And here is why. The upper estuary is a sensitive wildlife habitat. One species in this area is the critically endangered Australasian bittern, a shy bird that requires undisturbed, quiet habitat. Local conservationists and wildlife experts have been restoring and protecting habitat there in recent years, and it is one of the few places in New Zealand where the numbers of these birds are increasing. Any development enabling easy access into this area would have a negative impact. Southern Marsh next to the channel is a specialised non-tidal habitat. A range of waders and crakes spend time there, like royal spoonbills and marsh and spotless crakes, and rarer species of sandpiper do visit. These places need conservation, not recreation. And thirdly, consultation. We need to know that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council and Napier City Council are working with the Department of Conservation, iwi, conservation groups and local expert individuals on your proposals. People who know the history of the mistakes that have been made before. 2 examples. The Expressway Bridge, not fully spanned, now creating a bottleneck in the channel. And the planting of native trees next to the Southern Marsh, which is now rarely used by Godwits because of increased vegetation and cover, something they do not like, as they need a wide view for their own protection. To quote Brent Stevenson, a local ornithologist and ecologist, well-meaning people who are not fully versed in ecology and don't seek ecologists' advice could very well completely ruin the last little remnants of what we have at Ahuriri. So, we ask that you clean up the water before tipping point is reached. Take responsibility for the pollution. Keep recreation out of the upper estuary and consult the right people. We would like the name Ahuriri Conservation Park. Protect and enhance the significant natural area, the birds, the fish, the mud dwellers and the plants. Getting this right is vital for our unique place. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Question, Mark?
Thank you, Angie, for coming along. Can I just record that Councillor Ormsby really did wish to be here today, knowing that this topic was coming up. It's dear to her heart, and both her and Councillor Curtin have been working on it for a long time. So just to acknowledge that she's had a close family bereavement, so she's at Tangi today. The question I've got for you, and just looking at the park as opposed to the water quality aspect, is your message it's biodiversity first, recreation second, or is it biodiversity first, recreation nowhere? I mean, there are examples, for example, of Waitangi Park or Peka Peka where you've integrated biodiversity and recreation. Can you do it at all, or is it a management issue, or is it just a no-go in your view?
The upper estuary, no. But I understand the on the plan, even though I'm not fully conversant with what it actually means, that pink and green map that came out. I know certainly the Napier City Council is only talking about the recreation in the proposed wetland, new wetland there. But I was certainly not clear about what the regional council meant by recreation and where.
Could I rephrase the question to say, is it protect the birds first and only allow people in if it has no compromising effect on the biodiversity?
The answer to that is yes, because there needs to be the ecologists and the bird census done twice a year, which happens now for Birds New Zealand, to get in there to do the ecological work.
Neil?
Can I make a comment about education? I think there's been talk about an education facility, and I think the managed education is much more preferable than to free recreation. There's a list of things like, I mean, we'll know that people take dogs into there. There's big notices out. The council acknowledging, or conservation say people don't take notice. They do run amok. I think we have to be overprotective, but not exclude education. And people can, there's sometimes permitted visiting. So, yeah. And the other thing to say, what I'd like to say, is that right? is that this is quite an area that's probably different from the Peka Pekas and even Waitangi, because you've got it sited this really special area where there is industry right on its doorstep. You've got a population of over 60,000 plus the other, well, Hastings as well there, but right on its doorstep, 60,000 with all the stormwater, with all that comes out in there. So there's not many. Peka Peka can stand alone. People have to go there, go off the road. So it's quite unique in that it's got so much around it, and farmland right on the back, which happens with a lot of it, yeah. So.
Thank you. We don't have time for any more questions, so no comments.
That's fine, thank you.
But I think councillors really appreciated you coming along today and hearing this side of the story, which many of us haven't heard. So thank you very much.
Great.
Great pamphlet, by the way.
Thank you.
Great pamphlet.
Isabel put that together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Because it looks like it's
Philip Holt.
the only bridge. There's no bridge here. I thought she was talking about the other bridge, the old.
At least you can put photos up first.
Welcome, Philip. You know the rules. Each submitter has 10 minutes, and you can use it how you wish, or you can limit the time and get questions. But before we start the clock, we'd like you to introduce yourself.
Philip Holt, and my wife, Robin.
And where you fit into the scheme of things.
She's in charge.
It's in here.
Okay, it's in there. Okay. Righto. The floor is yours, Philip.
We did have some photos we wanted to
Yeah,
put
sure.
up, and I'm not sure where the lady had them all ready for us, but I don't.
Put them through to.
She's put them on and gave our stick back, but I don't know where I'll find them on here.
I've stopped the clock, by the way.
So
But anyway, I'll
And
keep
she's-
going.
Wind the clock back.
Yes.
she's not here at the moment, so
Possibly this one.
yeah. Is that it, do you think?
Is it about Ahuriri?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
I just couldn't. Oh, yes, that's right.
Those there?
Right, that'd be good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just start with that one.
Right, you ready to go?
Put kia ora tātou, ko Philip Holt, I hope. Thank you for giving me the opportunity of speaking today. The concept of a regional park is great, and as the Napier City Council states, great parks do great things for community. And it also states this project aims to create a regional park that promotes better environmental and recreational outcomes for the special place. The Doran there. First, we must establish a strong definition of a regional park and a strong definition of this special place. The special place has been on the Hawke family's doorstep for 5 generations, originally as Te Whanganui Aorotu, and after the 1931 earthquake, when the sea disappeared, large areas of mudflats appeared, which subsequently were developed into the Ahuriri estuary, and as we know it now, Pamu Ahuriri. There are 5 quarries on our farm used for the original embankment. This special place is also a wetland of national significance and is one of the largest estuaries on the east coast between the Bay of Plenty and Wellington. To have national and international significance means we need to be very, very careful with decisions we make for its future. We are indeed extremely fortunate to have local people who have vast knowledge of this area, with knowledge of critically endangered birds, their habitat requirements and management. There are between 70 and 90 bird species using this area at different times of the year. Also, there is a complex biodiversity of plant life, invertebrates, and the fish species. In my lifetime, I have seen many changes in the wider area that have had an effect on the Ahuriri estuary. My family and I live at Maraitara, bounding the northern end of the Ahuriri estuary, and we have a boundary from Kōpaki Bay north to almost up to Onehunga Road. And over many years have developed what was weed-infested land to a highly productive farm with attention given to environmental requirements, including fencing all the estuary to keep the stock out, and extensive native restoration projects and other plantings. Improved biodiversity is very evident, and that's just a sample of, on the picture there, of what that's just been achieved over 8 years on the estuary.
Was gorse infested country.
From gorse infested country, right. From a young age, I have witnessed what was a wide waterway with tidal influences reduced to a narrowing channel with large amounts of sediment deposited in the estuary after rain events. Click them over. Rain events, where are we? And to my horror, have seen the emergence of tube worm over the last few years, becoming a major pest which will affect the Ahuriri estuary's future. I do not think people have woken up to this massive problem we have on our hands, and especially at low tide when it is very evident. Just click away.
Oh, just have a look at the photo as it goes up.
I would like to see a light dredging of the tube worm and sediment to get the waterways back to the original state. And that used to be 100 metres wide, and now it is just reduced to a narrow channel. That's me just standing on a clump of tube worm. I can't even see the glasses on. I've seen the effect of large areas of pine forest at the headwaters considerably reducing the quantity of fresh water flowing into the estuary. Some of our farm waterways were completely dried up by a forest plantation, only to flow again after the pine trees were harvested. The reduced water flow creates warmer water, which obviously creates more problems. I have seen dead fish floating. This background I have presented gives an idea of the challenges the Ahuriri estuary has and will continue to have. But to change the land use, including the suggested removal of some of the embankments, or to allow people to move freely, either walking with or without dogs, to cycle or whatever else they decide to do, will add another level of challenges to the wildlife we are so desperately trying to allow to have a safe, secure and natural existence. Already I see people walking with dogs without permission around the embankment on Pamu Ahuriri. Look what we see on the lower end of the estuary at Pandora. Half the dogs run free, and what do dogs do well? They chase things. If the proposed Ahuriri Regional Park is to go ahead, careful decision making is critical. Consult people who really know, not those who think they know. Consult the local iwi, consult DOC and their knowledgeable staff. Consult weed and pest experts. We have a major cat problem, a mustelid problem, a Canada geese problem, and most importantly, consult those with real knowledge of the matuku, the banded rail, the mohu peruru, the spotless crake, pueto, the fernbird, matata, the godwit, kuata, to name a few, before considering letting any person anywhere near this special area. The land we know as the Lagoon Farm will most likely be an area where park-like development could occur. However, if large amounts of money are to be spent, certainly spend it on nature's urban runoff, the chemical spills, and most importantly the raw sewage problem. But before developing a regional park, spend it on rectifying the existing problems. The core principles of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council are to protect and improve the land, water and air. Please be sure the decisions you make will include protection of this unique flora and fauna of the wider Ahuriri area. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Questions? Neil, I'll come to you because you missed last time.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Philip, for coming along, and thank you for the wonderful work you and your family have done for a long period of time in the Upper Estuary. I just want to go. You've highlighted Upper Estuary issues. Clearly, that's your patch.
I suppose I'm more familiar with that area.
Yes. So, and obviously, if you like, the regional park development is very much focused on the lower end. But
yes,
just turning to the Upper Estuary and the work we've done with the tube worm,
yes.
Have you seen any improvements in flow or etc.? We've had several thousand. A lot of tube worm has been taken out over the past 3 years. We've spent quite a bit of money there. Have you seen improvements at all?
No.
Okay.
We watched a small area that was being sort of dredged a few years ago. That is just a minor area of what now is there.
Sure. So do you think
what happened that was not enough to make a difference overall? That's the problem. It is huge.
It just opened up the flow of that area, but now this tube went right across from the embankment right across to our side.
Sure. Okay. So you're thinking more investment in that would help.
Huge.
I think if we don't do something, we're not going to have an Upper Estuary. It's just all going to fill in, and it'll just be an absolute ecological disaster.
I suppose too the reason we're talking the Upper Estuary is the map, yes, showed the lower area, but also the blue bit, I think it was blue
Green.
or green, showed it right into our land as a proposal. So it's really important that if there's a plan to do anything, it's done as an overall look. So, yeah, we've got to protect as much as we can all that area.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you to your wife. Really important subject, and we know that you do an incredible amount of work up there, and we've got to start thinking about some of these things a lot harder than we are. So thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Cheers. Thank you.
William.
What a great name, William Wallace.
I saw him come in. Where are you, William? William, I saw you there. You're up.
There you go. Not paying attention.
Ah, that'll be right. Now, William, you know the rules. You've done this before. You have 10 minutes, and you can
Speak up, for I'm a bit hard of hearing.
Oh, you have 10 minutes,
Yeah,
and
I'll be more than enough, I can assure you.
more than enough. Okay. Welcome to your wife.
Right. I don't know where to stand up or sit down to put my case forward. Anyway, you've got my submission,
Yes.
the attachment.
Yes.
You have? Everybody got it?
Everyone's got it.
So you know I'm a farmer on the Burnside Road.
We all know who you are, William.
It's strange you say that, because the councillors have changed so often over the years, and I've been arguing my case for so long that an awful lot of the councillors, I have no idea who they are now. I know them by name, but I don't know them by face. Anyway, farmer down in Burnside Road, and I've been girning on for years about the gravel build-up. And Rex, you yourself have come to have a look. Okay, so the problem with there is that the gravel has built up so much that the water seeps through, and because the lie of the land, my land, slopes towards Tukipo. Now, those who are not familiar with this area, Will Foley will vouch for me. Well, it slopes that way, doesn't it? So therefore, water in the Tukituk blocked completely, no water whatsoever. It's all going underground, comes under the stock bank, through my land, heading towards the Tukipo. Now, of the bottom block, we farm several blocks of land down there, but of the bottom block, there's 162 hectare in that land. Of that 162, 142 are Class A land. I pay 17,500 rates on that for the stock bank alone. That equates to $123 a hectare. And I've actually watched over the years my land become less productive and more blinking wildlife of the wrong sort, pukeks and such, nesting on the banks of the creeks that flow through it. I'm fighting a losing battle, and I'm also fighting a losing battle of getting my plight over the fact that I'm rated at this high rate over to you fellas, that I'm being disadvantaged from the stock bank, not advantaged. So, you've been down, lots of people have been down. Mike Airy was sympathetic to my cause, and we've attended lots of meetings with Mike, and there was talk of rates review, rezoning, more feasibility studies, blah, blah, blah. Go on and on and on. And this has gone on for, well, so long I've forgotten when we started, 2014, 15. We've got nowhere. Now, the success of the Upper Tucky flood control scheme depended on the gravel being removed. That is absolute fact. It has to be removed for this thing to be successful. Now, the removal of the gravel was put in the hands of the council to try and attract extractors by one way or another to get it removed. That just has not happened. We've heard stories because it's difficult access, you name it, everything's been difficult. But at the same time, my rates keep going on and on and on and on, all the year. So I'm now saying to you, I cannot vouch for the option one, I'm taking for option two. Not that I don't want the gravel removed, but I cannot abide the thought of paying more rates. And if I can give you my idea of how it could be solved, like there's a lot of money that's lifted every year on annual rates, the operational fund, or whatever you want to call it, the maintenance, what we farmers pay. Instead of using that money for raking and trimming the stock banks, use a portion of that, maybe all of it for 2 or 3 years, to stockpile it. There's a huge site on the other side of the river, straight opposite me, the old Infracom site. It's sitting there empty. Now, there's nearly, I walked through it yesterday to have a look. There's nearly 5 hectares of ground in there, which I believe is council ground, even probably local council. 2 hectares of that 5 hectares is in trees, which are in bad need of felled. But all I'm trying to say is there's a huge site there that could be used as a gravel pit. Now, it's not in the view of anyone's house. It's not unsightly, as Chris Dolly said stockpiles might be. And it would be there for the local community to use as and when. And you can still control how much they take and when they take it. But we've got to get that gravel out of the river. That's a must. And rate review is also a must. We've got the amount of thousands of dollars that have been spent, wasted on reviews. Mike Eady got a guy called Philpott to come through there, and he did all this thing. And what happened? The outcome of that was too hard basket, can't do this. Now, you've seen my land. You've seen it. And I'm not a public speaker or somebody that gets hot on the collar normally, but I'm fed up with this. Yeah. And I'm fed up being told that something might happen, something might happen. The gravel extractors are coming. And then there's another reason why they don't come. One last point we make. Has the decision already been made to take the government money?
You're asking me the question?
I'm asking you a question now.
No, it hasn't.
Well, do the ratepayers say influence you more than the council workers, the engineers that are out there?
Staff.
I'd say we take advice from our council staff, and we also take advice from our ratepayers, such as yourself.
Because I have already been hinted at me that the decision has, that they, council staff, want to take the money.
Well, I think that is probably their preference.
Because if that was the case, I think I've wasted my time coming up here, haven't I?
No, because they don't make the decision. The governors around this table make the decision.
Right, I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Well, have you got a question?
One last point I should really make out. When I went through some of the forms this morning at 4:30 in the morning, because I couldn't think of it other than coming up here when I should have been out feeding my sheep, the urban ratepayers only pay 12% to the flood control stream. And this submission is worded for the benefit of the community from flooding. No mention of the benefit of farmers having their land protected from flooding or waterlogging or seepage. So maybe the wider community, through a rate review, could be altered so that it's fairer for all. Done and dusted.
Bill.
Thank you, William and Anne, for...
Anne's got her own spiel. Don't worry, you're not getting away that likely.
We noticed that.
And she's got all her facts and figures. She might not be able to put them across to you, but it's all there.
Yeah, look, thanks for taking out the time for travelling up here. Just on your last point around that government money, so I guess, do you still see that as an opportunity, that money that is on offer?
Do you know, Will, that it's going to cost me another $20 a hectare? And I'm already paying 123. Now, wouldn't that make any farmer balk? And logically, I should walk away from about 30 hectares of land and say, there you are, regional council, you've got one great big wetland all there already for you, and I've paid for it. This isn't fair. And how can I possibly agree to taking more money when I know that for the next 30 years I'm going to be paying 70% more in my rates?
Yeah. Sorry, he's not that young.
Well, I might not see the 30-year route, but I'm looking back at the last 20 years that I've been paying these high rates.
Fantastic. Craig, quick question.
Just a quick one. Do you believe that commitments were made for a rate review in the past?
Yes.
And your point is those commitments were made by someone, and you haven't seen them follow through, and here you come again.
Nothing's ever happened with a rate review.
2016. It was all, it's in your correspondence. Sorry, I just talk to William at the moment.
No, in 2016, Mike Eady was going to do a rate review. It was on the cards to be happening. Now, you fellas have changed so often that new, which old history to me is news to you fellas. Now that's wrong. You should have known about that.
Well, I won't take up your time because you've got more to say, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
No, William still has a bit more.
Oh.
Have I? Oh,
we will look into that though, William. I wasn't.
I don't want to have to look into it any longer. I want action. I want something to happen.
We have
All
to
the
look.
emails went to you, Rex. Yeah, sure do. I've got them. I've kept them.
Of the rate review.
Yeah. No,
Mr.
no.
Chairman?
Oh, talk of it. Talk of it. Yes.
What's this one?
Debbie Hewitt, Rex Graham.
Okay, well, we've come to the end of our 10 minutes, so, thank you, William. We will definitely look into that, and I can't go back to my old emails, but...
You do know with winter coming on, I'm going to go through another winter with... I've even got block culverts now. I've got 3 culverts flowing out. No, you can't expect me to keep paying these rates for what advantage I'm getting for it. My benefit is diminishing.
But who's responsible for clearing the culverts?
Who's responsible? In your last engineer's reports, it states loud and clear, engineers know how to deal with these problems.
Exactly.
Councillor engineers know how to deal with them.
Exactly.
Thank you, William.
It's not my problem that they're blocked, remember? And the reason they're blocked is they can't get out into the river.
That's right. Gravel's built up. Because the gravel's built up and the river's higher.
Well, Rex, we went through all that the last time you were down there.
Yes, I know, William, but we're out of time. But
well,
we now have a solution. We've now come with a solution. We've now come with a solution.
The solution never happens.
The solution costs money, and the government's put up money, and we're going to...
But I've been paying money. All the years I've been paying money. What have I got for my money?
Yeah, Rex,
What have I got?
Thank you, William. So, Anne, we'll have to get you back in a minute. Somehow we didn't put you guys together.
It's
not your turn.
Oh, it's only Once I get started, I'm ready to go.
Digby Livingston.
You can't beat them.
Digby Livingston. Thank you.
It's all your fault, Rex.
No, get that.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Digby Livingston. This is my wife, Juliet. She'd like to open with a small karakia.
A small karakia, a quick karakia, and a small pepeha. So don't start the clock.
You'll watch my finger. I'm not clicking it until you go.
Okay, you won't start the clock until I've...
No, I promise.
Okay, so my karakia. E te atua manaki tia mātou. Arahina mai na kōrero Māori. Arahina mai na tikanga Māori. Arahina mai na kōrero tika kaiuta ki te puta maramatanga. Tuatahi, ka mihi ahau ki te rongorawa, nana nei I hanga nā mea katoa. Ka mihi ki te papatuanuku, rawa ko rangi nui. Tēnā kōrua. Ka mihi atu ahau ki nā karunga atu ahau ki nā tamariki o papatuanuku e rangi nui nā atua Māori. Ka mihi ki nā Wairora me te mauri o nā awa o Heratonga. Ka mihi hoki ki te awa Tukitok. Me kei te hoki a mai, ka mihi a hau ki nā taniwha o te Tukitok awa, ko pōrere rawa ko tōrere. Nāna nei, e hanga nā awa ko Tukitok. Ka mihi a hau ki te honga mate. Tēnā koutou, haere, haere, haere. Kei te huri a hau atu ki te honga ora. Tēnā koutou ki te kaunihira, o te rohi, o te mātou a Māori. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Yeah.
Just pause, we will respond to that.
Uh-huh. Not finished.
I'm not finished.
No, I'm not finished yet because, shall I give my pepeha? My pepeha, just for the Māori who are here to understand where I'm coming from, ko monga kahea te monga, ko te whiwhi te awa, ko kaiuku taku morai, ko te rohi te mahe, ko rongamā wahine, ko kahununu, ko rongo whakata, o ko iwi. Ko te waka, takitimu, kurahopo, ko horoto. Kua mutu taku pepeha. I just want to say, I'm just giving my pepeha so you know where I'm coming from, because I'm coming from mana Māori, mana whenua. And I don't know who's on the council, who's actually representing mana Māori here. And we did ask in our submission who was representing the mana Māori. So I will just have to bring to your notice that the councils of the government of the day, this seems just like it was in the 1800s, where they did not respect or give any concern to Māori interests. Now, the Tukitok River and all these rivers are Māori. In the Treaty of Waitangi, they are a taonga. And the Tukitok River, which we're going to speak to today, is our tupuna. It's an ancestral river. And a river, our tapu, it's sacred. And I've watched it like William's seen it. It's been desecrated, and I've heard you talk on the council website to say that it has not been done right. Nothing has been done right since the government has been in. So we've got to restore it. We need to restore the river. So I'm just going to pass to Digby to talk, and then I also want Doug to speak because he's coming from a very Māori perspective with his thing. Even though it's not on your time frame, did anyone want to say anything? Tēnā koe.
I'd hate to be, I feel like I'm challenging you if I stand when you're standing.
Oh, you want me to sit? You can challenge.
E hara tēnei te wero atu ki a koe. Engari, rongo whakaata, rongo mai wahine, kauku marae, a tēnei au e mihi ki a koe. A kairunga I tēnā, ka timata hei au nei kupu kairunga, ki te atu. Hoi anō ko tāku e whakahokia, e whakautua I tēnā, turu whakamaua kia tīna. Aumi e hui e. A koe ai tēnā nau nei tuku, e whariki hea hei karakia kairunga, kia papatua nuku, kia humai tōna rongo, kia humai ki te whenua. E te hākui tēnei au e mihi ki a koe. Kairunga I au nei pātai, mā wainga taringa, e tuwhera hea I au nei kia tuku mai ke runga ki tēnā tata Māori. Ka tai wairua mai e rua a ngā kai kaunihira. Engari, he tangi tā tētahi, he kaupapa no tā tētahi. A ko rāua ingoa ko hine wai, a ko Charles. Me tētahi anō kāre tai tina mai te rangi nei ko apiata. Engari, kei runga I tō pātai, ai, ka rongohia ngā kai kaunihira I au nei pātai mā wai, kei runga tataha mana Māori, e rongohia I au nei tāu nei kōrero. Nō reira tēnei te mihi atu.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Now, just to be clear, we do only have 10 minutes. I know there's 4 of you, but we
Won't take, we won't, as William promised, but then changed his mind, you'll certainly be reasonably brief.
Let's go.
So, good morning. I am Digby Livingston. I farm and live next to the Tukituk River at Burnside Road, Takapo, and my family has farmed there since 1910. I'm speaking today on behalf of the ratepayers who reside near the Tukituk River on Burnside Road, and we have a number of concerns which we expect the Hawke's Bay Regional Council to consider. Now, the Regional Council sent out this correspondence entitled Time to Act, and the headline states in this document, "Have your say to protect our future." It further states, "We are consulting on our plan for the next 10 years. We propose to spend $14.7 million on infrastructures and capital projects in 2021. This takes advantage of funding already secured from the government's COVID-19 stimulus package." In the full consultation document, we talked about the things we have to do. We want your feedback on this, where there is real choice on when, what or how future work is delivered. And the preamble closes by stating, "Your opinions matter to us and we encourage your feedback." And I'm here today to give you exactly that. Under the heading of Must Do Work Programme, you propose to increase operational spending by $9.7 million and employ 23 new staff. The document from which I've quoted is loaded with misleading statements. And for example, and I quote, "Upper Tukituk gravel, option 1, brackets, preferred option. Go fast, remove the gravel to keep the community safe from floods." Safe from floods. That's what it says. This is an alarmist statement which emphatically implies that the whole community is in imminent danger of being flooded. It implies that all ratepayers, including residential ratepayers, are exposed to imminent risk unless the Regional Council goes fast. This is manipulative and is not supported by credible scientific evidence. It's nonsense. There's no evidence that any ratepayer, including those of us who live and farm next to the Tukituk, are in imminent danger of flooding. My family has farmed next to the river for 111 years. It has never breached the stock banks. I've lived next to the river for 72 years, and I have no fear of being inundated by floods. I want to speak to your proposal to borrow additional funds. The Council is an elected body and has a mandate to carry out the wishes of the ratepayers who elected them. It does not have a mandate to incur debt that has to be repaid by the affected ratepayers without the consent of those ratepayers. So in summary, we expect you to note the following. You are now on notice that a number of us do not want you to go fast or to borrow money that we ratepayers have to repay, or embark upon an empire-building exercise that requires the employment of an additional 23 staff. In 1989, when the Upper Tukituk scheme was under review, a number of affected farmers objected to the continuation of the scheme. The then Hawke's Bay Catchment Board ignored their protests and blithely extended the scheme at the cost to the ratepayers and the health of the river. You are on notice that in 2021, we expect to be genuinely consulted about any proposal that affects our land, the health of the river and public enjoyment of the Tukituk River. We demand to have our opinions objectively considered in a transparent process. We will not submit to autocratic decisions made behind closed doors. You are on notice that you have an absolute obligation to adhere to the Treaty of Waitangi and to respect the views of the Māori community. Kia ora. Finally, you are on notice that it is evident from Council correspondence, and as William has previously alluded, that Council appears to have already made a decision to proceed with the proposal, and that consultation is merely a box to be ticked by you. Mr. Graham has denied that, and the rest of you shook your heads and said no decision has been made. Well, that's very reassuring. But if in fact consultation is a box merely to be ticked by you, this is unacceptable, and we will call you to legal account if you proceed to rubber stamp your proposal without full, transparent consultation with us as ratepayers. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to relay my concerns as a matter of public record.
Thank you, Digby. Do any of your other party wish to speak?
Doug, would you? Okay.
I doubt if you have any questions of me, but I'm happy to answer them.
We have some time for some questions, so do we have questions? Ryan, thank you very much.
I'll leave you a copy, 7 copies of my statement. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. And you're back.
Anne Wallace, I'm sure you've worked out where we farm, so don't need to reiterate. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to be half as eloquent as Digby was. However, you'll have all read my submission, and you'll know that there was a community group formed in 2015 when Mike Adey was group manager of asset management, and I was involved with it, and it was very interesting and learnt quite a lot. But as we're in this position we're in now, didn't really achieve anything. Yeah, and I've done an awful lot of thinking about it over the years for what use that's been. But we were given a chance to make some input at the time, and so one of the things I learned was that the scheme was when it was constructed in the 1980s, it was based on a report by Gary Williams, who was the engineer, and it recognised that it was inevitable that gravel would build up in the rivers and it would be ongoing, and extraction was going to be the only answer to get rid of it. And however, gravel extraction was not included in the rates. Gravel extraction was left up to commercial concerns, and this worked for several years when there was a high demand for gravel. But then when it fell in the 2020s, the 2000s, the level of gravel just continued to build up. So now, in some places, it's above the height of the stop banks. And Williams told you the problems that's caused in our particular area. I don't have much knowledge of any other areas, but I know other people do have problems as well. Yeah, it should be remembered too that gravel extractors are free agents. They're commercial people. They work for a profit. But at the same time, they have to work within the constraints of both regional and local body regulations, which is hardly a systematic approach to such a serious issue. With the Go Fast option, it's out to solve a historic problem. So ratepayers of the future will be paying, even though some of them might not even been born yet, because the loan repayment is going to be spread over 30 years. What's the connection to somebody buying our farm in 20 years' time to all this gravel that's been allowed to be built up, way back in the 2020s? Just sort of doesn't seem to be quite fair in a way. Yeah, and rates, when the rates were struck back in 1989, those who benefited most were supposed to pay most. So, those people will be paying those rates in 20 years' time. What benefit did they get out of at that time? Okay, sorry, I'm not a good speaker. And Yeah. And okay, so question 3, yes, the go fast option was to keep the community safe. Flooding's a catchment-wide problem, and I say if you do go ahead and spend the government money, I suggest that all ratepayers in the catchment should be charged a fixed amount, which I see on our bill we're charged for civil defence, a fixed amount for every ratepayer. So in a sense it's the same, because this is like an emergency to get this all out before this big flood that we're going to have, Digby. So therefore we should all be equally concerned about it. So my preference is not to take the money. This is very intrusive, because I think it's, I'm not quite sure on my figures, but I think it's something like 800,000 cubic metres has to be removed in 2 years. And if you try and work out how many truckloads that is, and I'm not sure on this figure either, but it's over 40,000 truckloads or something that's going to be on the roads in a very short period of time. And you can imagine how much noise that's, and just the general mayhem caused by that. So what you need in the future is a better system, and you're working on it because you've got this global consent, which we think will be operational fairly soon, and be able to direct the extractors better than you can do now. And but you can also stockpile, and as William's mentioned, there are areas where the gravel can be stockpiled and not be obvious, not be intrusive. And I'm sure that some of the money could be diverted from the operational budget, that you could skip some weed control and things like that for a year or two. And yeah, so it's an ongoing, because it's an ongoing situation, you've got to set up your scheme so that it copes with an ongoing situation, not just a one blitz and then forget it again for another 20 years or something. Okay, so, and the other thing of interest, this is to do with he who benefits pays most. I was looking at our rates bills, and we pay rates. We pay Class A, this is on various properties, Class A, Class B, Class D, Class E, and Class F rates. And anyway, the multiplier that's used is Class F rates are exactly 1% of Class A. Class E rates are the 0.1%. Class E are exactly 1%, Class D are 25%, and Class B are 75% of Class A. And so what's scientific about that? Like, somebody, you can't say that it's been worked out that the Class A ratepayers are getting exactly the benefit from their money. It seems to be pretty arbitrary. Can you understand what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah, right. So my point there is that we aren't necessarily getting the benefit from our rates. It's just based on some arbitrary figures. So we need a rates review. And I think going back through all this time we spent talking to Mike Adey, back in the 1915, it was, I can send you all the correspondence if you want to read it. It's been mentioned 2015, 2016, 2018, and it just goes on. I can find correspondence all those years. And it's not happened. And so, and it's 32 years since the last one. And I don't know how often councils do rate reviews. That's my question to you. And also in that time, land use has changed. So, and also there's a disparity between the rates that urban ratepayers pay and rural ratepayers pay, and it's all based on land value, which, given that it's the community you're trying to protect, they live in houses, so they're not contributing through the value of their house towards the protection they get from the stock bank. And we've got no houses on our land, but we're paying the top rate. So, yeah, I think that's all. I probably missed something, but anyway.
Thank you, Anne. We don't have any time for questions, unfortunately. Oh, we're
That's
going
all
to
right.
push it. Will, you've got a question?
Yeah, just a quick one then. Just to be clear, because there's a lot of moving parts here, and I think, is there a flood risk? If there is, do we extract gravel? If we do, how do we fund it? Okay, so the previous submitters said there is no flood risk, and you sort of said something there briefly. So just to be clear, do you and William believe?
I think there's a flood risk.
No, do you?
Oh, well, it depends on how big a flood is. If it's a cyclone bowler, I suppose, it's 1 in 100 year flood that it's protecting against.
Yeah.
So what's a 101 year flood? It's a cyclone bowler type flood, isn't it? Sure. So there's always that chance, especially with climate change, yeah, of course there's always a percentage chance.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne, and thank you, William, for supporting your wife.
Yeah.
I think we're very clear on this issue from your perspective.
Okay. I hope you don't have any more people submitting on.
We probably will.
Tuki. Yeah.
Anne Redstone, are you here? I can't see.
Yep, down the
She
back.
is?
Very well. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Pop your presentation up there.
Yeah, we're going to put that on in a few seconds, so...
Okay, so I'll just bring it up so that it's
right.
there for you. Oh, pause.
Just a passenger.
I see you're bringing the cavalry with you, Anne.
Claims he's a passenger.
Is that the Flaxmere boxing under there, is it?
Only
Flaxmere.
Here to support my friend. Kia ora koutou katoa. Good morning.
So, and you know the rules?
Yes, I do. I'm just doing my mihi.
Okay, well, we won't press until you've done that.
just kidding, Rex. So, yeah, obviously, most of you do know I'm Anne Redstone, and I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the Waipiriku Waitangi Commemoration Committee. So we have a trust that we've formed to keep the Waitangi commemoration going each year. And what I'd like to do first
Would you introduce your two
Sorry,
companions?
Pete Finlay on our committee, Henare O'Keefe on our committee.
Is he famous at Flaxmere?
Quite famous in Flaxmere. So yeah, the reason we want to keep this commemoration going where it is because the Tiriti was signed at Waipiriku Rivermouth, and we think it's relevant and significant that we carry on doing this thing. So just got a short clip to show you. I think I have. I think this is what we do.
Right at the bottom.
Right at the bottom, I see it, right to Rex's right. Oh, there we go. Is there any sound? No sound. Can't see past Rex. Thank you.
We often can't see past them either.
No.
You're brave.
James.
Who's that smoke in the background? Look at that.
See, there you go.
Can we go back?
Look at those legs.
Oh, there's Rex. Can you see the sound? Yeah. It's quite relevant, unfortunately.
Look around.
Just can't see without James.
Oh, you've done it now. There goes your lunch. He's in the middle there.
We go back to the beginning again.
Yep.
We're going to start again. Just take the clock off for half a minute, Rex.
Yeah, we have.
Thank you.
Advertorial.
Thank you. No, that's
This is an
not.
advertorial.
o ki whakamaua kia tēnā tēnā haruki e hui e tāi. E tōna.
Haere mai, haere mai, haere mai, nau mai rai rugi i tēnei rangi o te tiriti o Waitangi.
O te waka e ko tahingia rai te hono o ngā tangata. Nō reire ngā mea pango. Karanga mai, karanga mai, karanga maira.
When we embrace our values and principles of the treaty, we commit to giving every person the opportunity to participate in a brighter future for us all.
As the Mayor of Ahuriri and the Council's Māori portfolio holder, I am absolutely committed to continuing to build on our Council's positive relationship with mana whenua.
It's very fulfilling that we're here today, because the Treaty of Waitangi never sleeps. We pull it out once a year and we talk about it, but actually it lives every month, every week, every day, every hour, every minute. And it's hard work, but we've got to do it. It's uncomfortable, but we've got to work it. It might be even guilt-ridden, but we've got to do it. Otherwise, we're not fulfilling the kawanata that our tipuna sign out here.
Thank you. As you'll see, you've funded us to do that, and we're very, very happy about that, and thank you. But my concern, the reason I'm here, is because of the state of the river. You will have seen there were 3 small waka in the river on that clip. They had to actually get out and push those waka at some point because of the build-up of silt in the river, and we were unfortunately unable to put in Tukamata o Kahanunu, which is the big waka, which has been doing the trip along that riverbank for 20 odd years, I think, taking the dignitaries down to the river mouth to reenact the signing of the Tiriti with the Genealogy Society and the Sea Scouts. So it's been 2 years we've been unable to actually get that waka into the water, which has really changed the significance of the event to some degree, although we're doing our best, and we're very sorry about what's happened with the river. So we're here really to encourage you to deal to that very quickly, but also to look at putting funding aside for better options, probably more regular options, to keep the health of the river rather than the dredging every 10 to 12 years, which we don't feel is working, obviously hasn't worked for some time. So, and we'd also like to see the dredging that's proposed, and I believe you've got a resource consent in play at the moment. We'd like to see that go a lot further up the river, certainly past Kōpātaki, Marae. So, yeah, that's mostly the reason we're here. I'm also making this submission on behalf of the recreational users, the skiers, the canoeists, the kayakers, wakarama, the fishermen and the rowers. The rowing club's thinking about shifting because of the state of the river and the fact that they have to actually get out and push their boats quite often. So, yeah, that's just not ideal. We're also doing this on behalf of any event organisers. We really need this river. The Big Waka also used to encourage a lot of tourism, and certainly the buses from the cruise ships used to come down, and Murray and Jim would take them up the river, and it was a huge thing for people to be able to do. And of course they can no longer do that, and even local tourists are unable to access that at the moment. So it's, as I say, that's really why we're here, and we hope that something can come of this very quickly. If anyone's got any questions or...
And Craig has one.
Thanks. Thanks so much for your submission, and very, very sympathetic to your position. Thanks. But just one thing, you've obviously looked at the proposal, and there's 3 options there, A, B, C, and you just touched on one of your reasons why I think on option A, or at least option 1. There's quite a difference in the cost of option 1 is about 5.9 million, option 2 is about 3.4 million. So there's quite a cost. So both options take up to pretty much to the bridge, and then the other option goes further up to the marae, and you've just suggested there that you'd actually like to go further. Could you just explain how you kind of came to the conclusion there of those 2 proposals? Because I understand why people would like that, but also got to try and find a way through with all those costs.
Well, I'm not an expert or an engineer, but for me, if you leave the silt in the river further along, then you're going to have silting up much quicker in the end. So yeah, that seems to be the issue. I think we need to start with a clean slate, and then, as I say, work on other options. Possibly, would it be more viable to flush the river from time to time? You know, I believe that was actually put into the consent right at the beginning, was flushing the river, but it's never actually happened. So yes, so for this particular dredging, I think we need to go as far as we can possibly go with it, to whatever cost, because the other cost is significant as well on users, and to basically to the whole community. So yeah,
Thanks, Anne.
That's why I asked for it to go further back.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have probably running out of time anyway.
Okay.
Thanks, Anne.
Thanks, Rex. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanari. Missed you on Sunday, mate. Thank you. Thank you.
Those 2 boys worked out perfect.
Margie,
Are we next?
you're next.
Come on, Nick.
Oh, so slow.
Leave me the tools again.
Welcome, Koia Pariki team.
Kia
It was a
ora.
pleasure to see you.
Kia ora, Rex.
If you wish to introduce yourself to councillors who might not know you, I'll hold the button until you're ready to go.
Tēnā hoki koutou I roto I te ahuatanga o te wā. Kānu te mihi atu kia koutou. Ngā kauni hera o ahuriri me kahungunu. Nō reira, kānu te mihi kia koutou katoa. Kia koe whiriri mihi atu kia koe. Kia ora, ko Margaret Maguire hau no te kāinga o whakatū, te marae ko Pātiki, te awa ngaruroro moko tuararo ki rangatira.
Kia ora, morena koutou ko Akanehi ahau. Kia ora.
So, shall we sit down, eh? It's actually an honour to be here today. First time I've seen everybody at the tepu, and just 4 of us. I'd just like to introduce my husband Tom, mainstay, and the one who worked with all the engineers and so on, and was the driving force of looking at how we could resurrect our awa, restore its mauri and its mana. This is my daughter Anne Maguire. Annie, she's another stalwart, and he whānau there. Kori hoki mai, e no hoki te.
Ah.
Re.
We've got whakatiki at the table now, have we?
Whakaki, yeah. Bit of a strategic plan to have Kori here. And of course my sister, my tuakana Aki, who spent most of her life, 45 years in America and Canada, working for New Zealand Tourism, and of course myself, Margie. We're products of Kohi Pātiki Marae, and we were brought up in a light that we were free-range children. We roamed all over the area, and part of that area included the awa. And we were little daredevils in those days. We used to jump off the railway bridge as the train was ready to cross. So that's how risque we are. So, engari, I just start, you know my name, and why I'm here is to talk about our awa, and I see that we have tautoko your plan about the 3 options that were produced in your paper. So to deepen the Clive River as far as Kohi Pātiki Marae for recreation, environmental benefits, and deposit the silt to land instead of the sea. So we agree on one of your points, 3 of the 3 points, that's what we choose naturally. So, and we agree that silt go to the land and we'll find the appropriate place rather than out to our beloved sea as well. So who are we here? You know, we're all from Kohi Pātiki, we all live at Whakatū. We've been there for the last, I would say 500 years. Our genes have been in that area. So we established Operation Pātiki in 2008, and it was a call from my sister who returned from Canada, and I said, what on earth did you do? How did you let that river get into the state? She blamed me. I thought, wow, no, it wasn't me. I said, I was busy working, so no excuse. So we formed Operation Pātiki. My husband is an avid fisherman from the Ngāti Pro, and he knew all about fishing in the awa and in the sea. So naturally, we as children lived off the awa. Our bread basket, our fridge was down at the awa, and guarantee at least twice a week we'd have fish for breakfast. The flounder, the Pātiki, we remember well. Tuna, heaps of it. My dad had to get his shearing gang out, six men, to uplift the hinaki. It was so full that he needed the whole shearing gang to pull it out. At Whitianga at just by Pakiaka Urupā at Whakawhai. So all those treasures, I guess, as growing up, they have driven us to do something about the river. So we come to you today with a suggestion and hope that we can accommodate each other by working together. We have certainly worked with the engineers on the awa, but we want to do more. We want to achieve our goal. So it was music to our ears, or actually sight for sore eyes, when we saw this added on to dredging as far as the rowing club, or no dredging, but also past Kohi Pātiki Marae. So that's why we're here, full force with all bells and whistles clanging away as we speak now. So from the Operation Pātiki, we engaged with doctors of the awa, environmentalists and so on, and to get reports about our awa. And we're satisfied with what we got. And so it spurred us on even further to do more about restoring our awa. So we asked the question before we set off, mā wai rā e taurima? if not us, then who to resurrect this river? So we are still committed from day one to now. In fact, we have more. We have some, I would say, occult followers who email me regularly and say, how are things going? Are you annoying the council still? Engari. So we've challenged ourselves, really, no longer to be in denial about the state of our beloved awa. Our family have been in this area since the time of Whātonga in the 1500 AD. The Ngariroro River was helping develop the Hiratonga Plains. The silt came down and it just deposited, it ran riot all over the area, building up the Hiratonga Plains, of which we are now mana whenua of these plains. Our tūpuna lived and defended o tāne nui a rangi pā on the riverbank of the Ngariroro, opposite the present-day marae Kohupātiki. O tāne nui a rangi was built strategically to ensure that the surrounding lands that produced an abundance of food supply was protected. So strategically, we're already thinking about what good it can do for the area. Protection was one. At the time of Captain Cook, whalers and sealers and our tipunas traded and exchanged goods using the awa. So the awa was our natural superhighway, the M16, you might call it, and that's where we were rowing our boats. It was also the old days, the awa extended from Omahu out to the Ngariroro at Waitangi, and then it came along here to Ahuriri at Karana Bay. It discharged into the Whanganui a Rotu. So, and I just did some historical stuff, and I was looking at names of some of my tipunas, and there's one called Ramarihi Takato Awanga, and it means flaming torch lying down in the waka on the Whanganui a Rotu. So a granny of ours was named after probably grandpa or great-great-grandpa was fishing at the time of her birth. Another one was called Te Hoi Rākau, wooden paddle. And the last one was called Ngāpu o Te Rangi, broken skies. So grandpa obviously was out there fishing this whole area. And that's kind of like what we dream about. We could restore some of that happening again. So at the time, of this, was musket wars going on, and our little nannies, they were young babies taken away, and one went to Tuwhare Mananui, the other went to Te Kuiti at Maniapoto, and the last one, the Ramarihi at Takato Awanga, was taken to Port Waikato. And there she was for 40 years. She returned to repatriated to Kahungunu, and her son, who was educated by Robert Mounsell, read and write and speak English, Māori, they returned to Kahungunu and set about restoring our whenua and whānau living on the land. So the river was the main thoroughfare to the hinterland, and with the natives, naturally we protected who went up there and who could go there and so on. So in our grandpa's time, Hiratonga was renowned for its hospitality, serving a variety of traditional delicacies sourced from the awa. They were outstanding hosts, our grandparents, and people still talk about it. Grannies and great-grannies talk about coming to Koipātiki at synod time, the Anglican Church. And they talk about being hosted and served up the delicacy of fish for breakfast at least. So I talk about these with a passion and I recite these things because our river today is now incapable of providing safe food sources in its current condition. It fails to deliver all the things that as a child could practice, and I cannot now share that with my children and grandchildren. None of us can. It's unsafe to go in that river. So I want to get back to our background, why we're here about dredging. In the early 2016, community leaders at Koipātiki and Whakatū requested that the Regional Council investigate options to mitigate adverse effects associated with sediment and aquatic weed in the old Ngariroro Karamu Clive River, following concerns over water quality and the odour associated with cut weed. So Operation Pārtiki and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council worked together to formulate a plan for the dredging of the awa. And our plan was this. It was agreed to dredge the full width of the river, 13 to 14 metres, bank to bank, by 200 metres along the bank. So there were two companies, Southwater and Siltbuster, were companies originally consulted to extract and deposit the sediment. And then it was there to analyse the sediment and deposit sediment to nearby land. And there was an allocation of sum of approximately 44,500 in the budget.
Margie, I've given you an extra time. Can you, but you're well over your time.
Okay, am I?
Yes, you are, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But in fairness to other submitters, can you just wind us up, please?
So I'll get Aggie to wind you up now. She's good at it.
Why do we want the river dredged? To expose original shingle substrate, to increase water clarity, to restore and enhance habitat for freshwater species, fish and birds and insect life, to monitor health, record and size and tag native species. These are migrating species. To monitor exotic fish species, to ensure our endemic species are revitalized, and to see the return of the river to swimmable and recreational pursuits at Koipātiki and upstream. To remove the weed by the root system at all costs, because hair cutting just does not do it. We wish to be consulted on any sites of wahi tapu selected for deposit of dredged sediment to ensure they are not wahi tapu designated and that we have full knowledge of any intended state.
This is not a quick wind-up.
It's winding. The sediment does not originate from the river itself, but from tributaries, runoff, and erosion. Dredging is an invasive means of sediment removal. Ongoing dredging will lead to continual disturbance and destruction of freshwater habitat. The dredging of the awa is a symptom of sediment introduction, and therefore filtration is a means to avoid the issue. In summary, Operation Pārtiki wished to be consulted to complete the original plan that we didn't get to hear of our vision to partner with Hawke's Bay Regional Council in the development of a catchment plan. Without a catchment plan, we're just treading water over and over and over again. And that's the plan we have for the Ngariroro River. Ngā mihi, kia ora koutou katoa.
Thanks very much, team. We're in no doubt, and we do appreciate all the work you do, and especially you, Tom. You've always got the shovel in hand, and you're doing the mahi. So thank you very much, everybody.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you.
Larry.
Morning.
Morning, Larry.
Councillors. It seems you guys need to buy some dredges. This is an opportunity I'm going to take rather than write to the paper or do another term on council or be another 3 years with a coastal strategy. It's really come about from...
Are you ready to go, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to do my best to leave plenty of time for questions.
Thank you, Larry.
Before I go to there, to that point, could you confirm the councillor's got the attachment with the references?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. So that's a 50-page document that if you join them together. This came about from the 3rd of February when there was a mere 2-metre swell at West Shore and the waves overtopped the nourishment. Didn't completely flood the back shore, but it was a real good indicator to see what's going to happen at West Shore if we get a 7-metre swell, anything like 1974. Yeah, it's not unreasonable not to expect... Oh, do you want a page number for that? That's good.
Is this the one?
Yep. That's all right. That's the that goes back to a few years. That's at the beach down at Kiwi Beach, down by the toilet, down by the reef. That completely broke through. Now, if there was a decent storm after the event, before they got the nourishment done, there would have been chaos down there for a couple of homes, and there's a home there with water 4 inches from the second step, so those people weren't far away from getting some devastation. I've got this map here if anyone's keen on it. That's the 1944 US Navy map showing the theory that the earthquake is responsible for West Shore. It dispels that theory, just shows the delta that they talk about. The delta was sand from that came around the shipping channel, not via the Tūtaukuri, which was full of mud and silt at that time. So that there does help to better understand it, and coastal scientists agree with that. I have a 2-minute movie in here that I could make available, and you can watch. That's of that West Shore swell that we had in February. It was just an indicator of what we've got coming if we have a decent swell. I suppose the best thing is to assume, that's the details of the swell from the port board, just to confirm that the details were right, and it was just a mere 2.14 metre significant wave. But it was, fortunately, the peak period was only 12 seconds. When it gets around 20 seconds, like it did during Cyclone Pam, there's a lot more energy in the waves, and that's when you get overtopping. Right, I'd just like to see if there's any questions on the submission as I have presented it.
Councillors, I'm sure Neil would have one. You have one, Jeff?
Yeah. With much interest, I've read your submission, and just to prove that I did, I had to do quite a bit of Googling to actually find out what actually a rainbow...
Rainbowing?
Because it actually didn't come up on Google what a rainbowed adding of sand to the beach was, until I finally found it after about half an hour of searching. And what it actually is actually you spray water with sand in it and onto the beach from the channel.
May I just say that the Albatross at the Port of on contract for 10 years has got all that equipment. They've given us a rate to pour it off the front.
Have they done it before?
With the Albatross, I don't know. I dare say they have. It's a pretty new dredge, I think, and they may not have used it a lot. I do not know that.
So in your submission, you mentioned that there is actually, you've got seafloor imagery,
where also it proves that the sand is actually not from the Tuatakuri, but it's from another source, and it ends up in the shipping channel. So my first question is, where is actually the source of that? If it's not Tuatakuri, where is it from?
Tukituk.
Is it Tukituk?
Yep.
Okay. And
there's very little coming out of the Tuatakuri and the Nguruo. It's about 4 k's back, I think, the shingle. And I've heard 150 years and 400 years before that gravel and sand will get to the coast.
Because that has to
But there's not a
travel
lot.
past, then has to travel northwards past the...
All the shingle travels north, right from the
Correct,
Cape.
yep.
It all goes north. There's no such thing as a southerly drift. If there was, someone's got the earth spinning the other way all of a sudden.
And we understand that. That always been the case. But it definitely passes the harbour then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And there's another point on the rainbowing to help you understand what rainbowing is. Just Google, YouTube, Tweed Heads, I think it's called sand motor, and they've put groins out and they pump the sand from one side to the other.
Well aware of...
They've got a similar, are you?
Well aware of the sand motor. I've actually studied as agricultural civil
Sand motor was a crazy idea that the council had when they thought they get 25 million off the PGF fund, and sand engine has got no place that we sure, or in the North Cell, no place whatsoever.
I haven't studied that, but I know that it
Well,
works
when
in
you do,
other places in the world.
When you do, you'll find the 25 million has to be invested every 25 years. And it's a moving thing, it goes along the beach.
You are aware of the photos that the public makes of the outlets, and that we see a progressive accretion of sand in that area, on West Shore?
Yeah, it's made a tremendous benefit north of the surf club where the dredgers can get in, and they can find to get in there because the main reason was that the port didn't want to have the consent permit go into the southern end, because if they did, they would have had to monitor the reef to see, the shellfish, with the effect on shellfish on the mussels. They didn't want to do that, so the cut in that erosion in the disposal zone, the dump zone, off the surf club, is due to the port's influence. Back then.
Thanks, Larry. What does the Clive River look like 10 years or so down the track if it was to follow your suggestions there of that further dredging and all those kind of things? I'm just trying to...
Oh, no.
And how far
all
up?
dredging for West Shore should be coming out of the shipping channel, which is the cause of the problem. But instead of, they've dumped thousands, millions of cubic metres.
Let's I just know.
Oh, you're talking about Clive only?
Clive only, because you make a point about Clive and how it should look, and there might be 2 channels.
Well,
I
think
ideally,
I pulled that out of version 2, but there's experts here on that. I'll leave it to them.
Okay.
I really just was looking for a more economic
use of the
regular program to keep it clear, rather than the delays and then having a major job like you've got now.
So if just that was the case, and if it's okay, Chair, if there's, we have other submissions talking about the sediment and the heavy metals and things there. So if you were to pick that up, regardless of how you did it, and use it like you're proposing, would that pose a problem, do you think?
My proposal's got nothing to do with material from Clive. Nothing whatsoever.
Right, okay. So just dig that up.
This is for West Shore, this is for the North Cell.
Put it on the banks. That's how.
Oh, sorry. The idea of having an access to for the dredgers with the long arm. That could be formed from the silt, or if not, bring in some material, because it needs to be permanent.
Yeah.
It would narrow the river, but these diggers now can reach a fair way out in the middle, and they can be done any time of the year, and they has a bit of longevity because the material can be trucked anywhere.
Yeah.
That was all. It was just off the hat. I really was just a lead in to get to what I was.
No worries at all. But it got my attention because I'm very interested in that.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Larry. We're now out of time, so thank you very much, and we really appreciate that your continued interest in these things.
No questions. I'm not going to be wasting too much more time on it. I've been called a lone voice of the council by the mayor. I can't get any traction there. I really might have to wait for a disaster to prove what I'm on about. However, having said that, as soon as we can get Dr. Terry Hume involved, who did you read all of his report on the commissioner hearing for the port?
Most of it. Yep.
He was quite clear with where the sand is going, that should be going to West Shore to keep it in a healthy state. And there's a lot of people think that get in there and fix it. The other reason why I'm here is that the Napier City Council has pulled the pin on West Shore. They had 13 million. I thought I got a little bit of traction on the council. That was in the long-term plan with 13 million. The trouble is they think that you can just do it for a couple of years and leave it. It's a constant process. It's got every 2 years that the port dig that channel, that material has got to go onto the beach and get into the system. And it's constantly moving. It's not a fix and forget thing.
Thank you, Larry.
Not for the north-south. I'd like to get a bit more traction, but
that's right.
Anyone want this movie to watch? There's only it's 2 minutes and it's quite interesting. If anyone wants to put their hand up, I'll
send it to Jared.
It's in that link.
Yeah, I'll grab it.
Okay.
Yes, share around.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
As long as it has got no viruses on it, I'm okay.
No bugs. No bugs.
Is Yasmin here? Oh, yes, Yasmin, you're up. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Right, sorry. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Yasmin. So
thank you.
You know the rules. Every speaker has 10 minutes, and you can use the whole 10 minutes for yourself, or you can use a bit less and have questions from council. It's up to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll see how I go for time. And thank you, everybody, for having me today. I feel privileged to come along and say something. I should warn that I feel quite left field in my ideas, coming and hearing.
Left field.
Good. It's going to be a little bit left field. Anyway, thank you. So I've come to speak to the water storage proposal. And to be fair, I didn't quite understand. I did just a bit of research to find out exactly what water storage you were talking about. I saw some of Tom Belford's articles and links to some dam proposals, some dam building schemes. I don't know how correct that is or not, but I'll assume it is. Anyway, so I see water storage myself as two ways of storing water. One is through reservoirs, and I guess the dams would fall into that category, and the aquifer is where we have a big source of water. And the other is basically water retention in soil. And that's the method that I'm wanting to talk about most. It's great to see that water storage in dams, or water storage full stop, is being addressed. But I don't see anything in the plan relating to the second method of water storage, which was basically storing water retention, keeping water retention in the soil. I'm just going to take Nicole Masters, she's a soil scientist you may have heard of, analogy. She says we need soil to operate like a sponge. A large component of soil's ability to hold water comes from the soil humus content. Soil humus content is the same as organic matter or carbon, you can call it what you like. And soil humus, or whatever you want to call it, holds 7 times its own weight in water in the soil. So the US Department of Agriculture found that an increase of 1% organic matter in soil, and this is loam soils, and it would vary depending on what soil type you have, basically increases the water holding capacity to 187,000 litres per hectare. So that's a lot of water. And that's calculated down to a depth of about 30 centimetres. And with drying and wetting cycles or rainfall throughout the year, it can increase up to 3 times this amount. So you're talking nearly 500,000 litres per hectare per year on your land, right where the rain falls, if you have a spongy, humus-filled soil, and that's 1% increase in your soil humus. So, I mean, it's a lot of, it's 1% increase, and it creates a big difference to the water holding capacity. And it also compares quite well, I think, to a water dam scheme. You know, you've got a pool of water that you use to irrigate from, or you've got the water stored on your land where it falls. Siobhan Griffin, who recently did a Zoom presentation to New Zealand farmers, practices regenerative agriculture in upstate New York, and she measures the soil organic matter content of her farm and has recorded a 0.5% increase in annually in organic matter on her farm. So it sounds small, but if you add that up over 11 years, that's a huge increase in organic matter in the soil. And typically farms who practice regenerative agriculture do see organic matter rise from about a baseline of 1 to 2%, which is fairly low. A lot of New Zealand farms probably have a bit more than that to start off with, but starting around 1 to 2%, you can build up 5 to 8% over a 10-year plus period. That's a long-term plan. And this can add up to 25 to 60 tonnes of organic matter in an acre of soil. That's huge. Big. I'm impressed. And the benefits of improved soil structure and capacity of holding water are not only resilience in drought seasons and drought conditions, they also prevent a lot of runoff, which has been the topic of, I guess, a lot of where the silt comes from in the rivers that we've been hearing about all morning. You know, you can reduce a huge amount of that build-up right there in your agricultural practice. It also, it builds the soil structure, it reduces pooling and effects of flood events. And that's not even mentioning any of the other beneficial gains of regenerative agriculture, including a financial gain. And yeah, so just in a recent article by Tom Belford as well, he wrote that the Secretary of the Environment and Government Statistics here in New Zealand recently produced a report which found 80% of New Zealand land is not meeting at least one of the soil quality indicators, which is mainly compaction of soil, loss of diminished macroporosity. And yeah, so I mean, you can find that information yourself. It's available everywhere, really, if you have a wee look around and an interest in it. So that's one of the reasons I've decided not to go into a huge, lengthy spiel on what regenerative agriculture actually does and how it works and how you implement it. I know some of you are farmers and come from farming backgrounds, and yeah, anyway, so I really just want to ask, you know, why, what can the council do to support farmers to practice this kind of practice, which has so many benefits, and is the council really interested in this kind of water storage? Is the council interested in improving our soil organic matter? And yeah, you know, we can't just rely on reservoirs. I think reservoirs are great, but they are not enough if you really look forward, you know, to the future and climate change. And I know that many people, it's maybe a contestable issue, but it's generally agreed that this is where we're heading. And, you know, in a long-term picture, I believe we need a good solution. And a lot of countries around the world that are much harder up on the climate front than us are already getting into this kind of thing. And I mean, there's Hawke's Bay farmers as well are getting into it. It's just not really promoted, and how can would you be interested, do you really care about this kind of thing to promote it and actually, maybe look at how we can support it more. There's a budget for, building infrastructure. Is there a budget as well for this kind of education and this kind of conversation?
Thank you, Yasmin. We have time for a quick question.
Yeah.
I want to go to Will, actually, as a regenerative farmer. But
Okay.
firstly, yes, yes, yes to all your questions from me as the chair. Will, have you got a question?
Yeah, I don't know if I've got a question there. Plenty
Or
to
a comment, yeah.
plenty to comment
Yeah.
on. But great submission. Thanks for that. I presented something very similar to this council when I first got on about all the benefits that land management can have, over and above water retention, such as like nutrient runoff, as you said. But I guess my only question was going to be, thinking that through that whole presentation, was to all the farmers listening here, what are some of the key principles that you would have, promoted that they can start to influence all those benefits you were talking about? And you don't have to answer that, but
I can if you like, but...
Probably just to answer your question around, are we willing to fund and support? So the Future Farming Trust is probably the best vehicle at the moment via the Regional Council for this this field. So, and some funds from the last long-term plan were allocated to that trust and looking at this kind of exact topic. So that's the best vehicle going forward at this stage.
Yeah. So did you want to, sum up basically soil building in the soil? So really, it's about you could look at it as your grazing practice if you've got livestock on your farm. Essentially what you're doing is you're growing your root system into the soil, and your root system creates the channels which, when they decay, create the air and the water flow. The water, they increase the capacity. They turn it into a sponge, essentially, and the root systems will also increase your biodiversity under the soil, which means that you've got the, you should equate what you've got above soil with what you've got below soil. So if you're growing your topsoil really short and you're not letting it expand beyond the whites and into tall grass, then you're also reducing the capacity for the root to grow. I think there's a ratio of something like 50, if you graze more than 50% of your grass tops, then you start impacting on the root growth. Anything down to 50% is pretty much minimal impact on your root, and everything beyond 50, so once it goes up exponentially. So once you get to 80% of your grass top being grazed, you've reduced all extra growth on your root.
Thank you, Yasmin. We are well out of time.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And
welcome to stay for a cup of tea. And Will is all over this. We've been visited his farm, and exactly what you were saying there, he gave us that same speech. So thank you. We'll break for a cup of tea now, and 10 minutes. We'll get back. We're lost a bit of time.